Zhou 16 was invigorated as an ecstatic expression appeared on his face. It was actually the follow-up cultivation method of the Supreme Sacred Body. Moreover, it was a cultivation method that went all the way to the upper Supreme Will realm. Didn't that mean that he could successfully possess the Lord Talent at the Supreme Will realm after he cultivated the Supreme Sacred Body to the Supreme Will realm? And that was not even the point. Zhou 16, who already knew the origins of the Supreme Sacred Body, knew very well that the Supreme Sacred Body was a part of an eternal immortal realm inheritance. And it was this small portion that they didn't have, be it Lord of 10,000 Evils, Lord of Spring and Autumn, or God King Heaven Punishment. Only him, a newly promoted Supreme Lord Reserve Army, had long possessed this portion of the inheritance. Zhou 16 did not know if the Supreme Will thought highly of him, or if there were other reasons for it to hand over this portion of the inheritance to him, but it was ultimately a good thing. And now the Supreme Will was about to hand over a portion of the inheritance to him. Zhou 16 could not help but think about something. Is the Supreme Will really going to pass the position of Supreme Lord to him? Otherwise, why would he be so generous as to give him the eternal immortal realm inheritance? There was no time to think about the reason. There were too few arguments after all. They were just deductions, no matter how much he deduced. He stretched out his hands and solemnly took the golden ball of light from the Supreme Will. Zhou 16 looked at the golden ball of light as the power of his will stirred slightly. The next second, the golden ball of light turned into countless specks of light that flew around Zhou 16's divine body. Then, like a swallow returning to its nest, they surged into his glabella and fused into his divine spark. Zhou 16 closed his eyes. At the same time, far away in the reincarnation sacred palace, Zhou Zhou also closed his eyes and simultaneously sensed and browsed through this portion of the eternal immortal realm inheritance. After a long time, Zhou Zhou slowly opened his eyes. Excitement appeared on his face. Cool! That's amazing! Is this the inheritance that leads directly to the eternal immortal realm? Compared to the inheritance of the Chaos Will, this eternal immortal realm inheritance is much simpler in terms of advancing to the Supreme Will realm. But just the succinct part of it made me feel enlightened. This experience of accepting an inheritance far exceeds the inheritance of the will of the Chaos Will. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. Even though he was only a Grade 3 Supreme God realm now, it was very exaggerated that he already had several top-notch inheritances. This included the inheritance of the Supreme Will realm, the inheritance of the Will and the eternal immortal realm inheritance given to him by the Supreme Will. The top-notch inheritance was undoubtedly the will inheritance of the Chaos Will and the incomplete eternal immortal realm inheritance of the Supreme Will. Previously, he had accidentally obtained the willpower inheritance of the Chaos Will through unifying the Chaos humans. After that, he had been studying this willpower inheritance. After that, he had indeed benefited greatly. Otherwise, he would not have been able to break through to the Grade 3 Supreme God realm so quickly. The speed at which Zhou Zhou advanced from a Grade 2 Supreme God to a Grade 3 Supreme God realm was even faster than the speed at which he advanced from a Grade 1 Supreme God to a Grade 2 Supreme God. Other than the few treasures that assisted in cultivation, the Idii, will inheritance of the Chaos, Will could be said to have played a decisive role. He originally thought that the Chaos Will's will inheritance was already top-notch. However, he did not expect that after reading the legacy of the Eternal Immortal Realm, he would suddenly feel that the legacy of the Chaos Will seemed a little crude. The Eternal Immortal Realm inheritance provided simple and straightforward answers to some key advancement points. But the Chaos Will's will inheritance explained it as it was very complicated and difficult to understand. When the two were compared, the difference was obvious. With this partial inheritance of the Eternal Immortal Realm, my chances of advancing to the Supreme Will Realm in the future will increase by at least 30%. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up. Regarding this guess, he was very confident and certain it couldn't be helped. The eternal, immortal realm inheritance was that powerful. It was like asking a genius mathematics professor to solve a math problem for an ordinary high school student. Was that still considered a question? Wouldn't he be able to find out the answer with a casual glance? Many thanks to the Supreme Will for bestowing this technique. That's exactly what I want. Zhou Zhou thanked him. The Supreme Will smiled. He had clearly expected Zhou Zhou's reaction. Then, he asked, the inheritance of Yellow River's will. How's the preparation on your side? Reporting to your majesty, I've already sent a clone to Yellow River, Zhou Zhou said respectfully. Fight. To obtain the inheritance of the Yellow River's will. We don't want the inheritance of the supreme great cosmos to fall into the hands of the illusionist clan. If the other party uses the Yellow River's will to deal with us in the future, just thinking about it is disgusting. The Supreme Will laughed. I'll get it, Zhou Zhou guaranteed. The Supreme Will nodded. Clearly, he was very confident in Zhou Zhou's strength. He knew very well that with Zhou Zhou's strength, there were probably very few supreme gods who could find an opponent. It was not an exaggeration to consider he as the #1 expert below the Supreme Will realm. The Yellow River land of Maili. Inheritance was another place where only supreme gods could enter. If Zhou Zhou's clone went, there was a high chance that nothing would go wrong. However, in order to be cautious, he still reminded, I know you're strong enough, but you still have to be careful. The Illusionist clan is the conceptual god extraordinary tier system. Their methods are strange and unpredictable. Even if you're much stronger than they, you might fall into their trap if you're not careful. When the time comes, remember not to slack off. Yes, my lord, Zhou Zhou nodded. The Supreme Will nodded and waved his hand. Go! The war is not over yet. The two of you should go in and practice. Let me see how far you've come in this time. Don't worry. The ultimate. Void Race's Supreme Will realm. Existences will be targeted by our Supreme Will realm existences. They won't attack you. When this war is over, you can do whatever you want. Oh yeah, one more thing. You were the one who conquered the ultimate void battlefield. After this war is completely calmed down, you can take over the position of the Lord of 10,000 Evils and take charge of this battlefield. Even though this ultimate void battleground is lonely, it contains many benefits. Let's not talk about the void mystic realms that contain rich promotion energy. The ultimate void battleground also has the ability to attract ownerless treasures floating in the ultimate void outside. Every year, Lord of 10,000 Evils could rely on this battlefield to gather a large number of ownerless treasures from the ultimate void great cosmos. There was no lack of supreme god-level treasures, and occasionally there were even supreme will-level treasures that were attracted over. The Lord of 10,000 Evils has accumulated a lot of resources just by relying on this source of harvest. I believe that after you take over this ultimate void battlefield, you will definitely be able to obtain more and better treasures than the Lord of 10,000 Evils. The Supreme Will smiled at Zhou 16. He knew very well how astonishing the luck of his successor was, and how good he was at obtaining treasures. If the Lord of 10,000 Evils could obtain a number of treasures of 1 every year through the ultimate void battleground, then after the common people's regal took charge of this place, the number of treasures he could obtain every year could probably be described as 100. This was the terror of the common people's regal's ability to collect treasures. Otherwise, where did he get so many Master God tier divine artifacts and supreme divine artifacts? Zhou 16 looked hesitant. The Supreme Will could tell at a glance what Zhou 16 was conflicted about. The Lord of 10,000 Evils had already treated him as the underling of the common people's regal after all. As a big brother, he felt like he was snatching his little brother's territory. It was indeed a strange feeling. Don't worry about it. I've already asked the Lord of 10,000 Evils about this. The Lord of 10,000 Evils has already agreed, the Supreme Will said. In fact, he wouldn't be able to say anything with his identity, even if he didn't ask the Lord of 10,000 Evils and directly assign the ultimate void battlefield to Zhou Zhou. This was because the ultimate void battlefield was created by the Supreme Will. He could let whoever he wanted to manage it. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was already very considerate of his feelings to ask about this. Zhou 16 could not say anything, since there was no need for he to shirk responsibility. The Lord of 10,000 Evils had agreed. The ultimate void battleground was indeed a treasure land after all. It would be hypocritical to say you don't want it. It's settled then. Go to the battlefield with the Lord of 10,000 Evils. The Supreme Will said, "Yes, my lord." Zhou 16 nodded and left. The Supreme Will looked at Zhou 16's departing figure and then at the world rings in his hand. A faint smile appeared on his face. Common people's regal. The legacy of the eternal immortal realm is very good. However, not every god spirit who cultivates the eternal immortal realm inheritance can reach the peak. Even I have more than one eternal immortal realm inheritance in my hands. Haven't I always stopped at this position and been unable to reach that position for a long time? Don't underestimate the difficulty of reaching that level. The Supreme Will muttered on the other side after Zhou 16 returned. He first looked for Lord of 10,000 Evils and told him that the Supreme Will wanted them and the Lord of 10,000 Evils to test their skills on the battlefield. The Lord of 10,000 Evils immediately understood what the Supreme Will meant. This was a test for them. No problem. Come on, big brother, the Lord of 10,000 Evils said happily. Wait a minute, Zhou 16 stopped him before asking. The Lord Supreme Will told me about the ultimate void battleground just now. Big brother, the Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled and raised his hand. Actually, I'm already tired of staying in the ultimate void battleground. I've been in this place for too long, so long that I almost thought that I would have to die here to leave. In fact, if it weren't for the obsession in my heart, I would have left long ago and lived the life I wanted. Now that you're here, and you're more suitable to take charge of this place than me, entrusting this place to you is something I can't ask for more. The Lord of 10,000 Evils sighed. Big brother, you know that before I became a Supreme Lord Reserve Army, I was already a demon sealer. My favorite thing to do is to use my best sealing skills to bring my companions to travel the myriad worlds and seal the demons of the myriad worlds, bringing peace to the myriad worlds without demonic harassment. Now that I can finally get on with my life, don't leave me with the burden again. On the other hand, very few demons appear in the myriad worlds these days. I plan to go to the ultimate void great cosmos and take a look at the other great cosmoses. I want to experience the unique scenery of the other great cosmoses. The Lord of 10,000 Evils' eyes emitted an extremely bright light as he said, I'm already tired of looking at the supreme great cosmos. I should go out and take a look. Zhou 16 looked at him for a long time before nodding slowly. Okay, then I'll stay here. If you need any help in the future, just let me know. I will definitely help you if I can help. I'll keep that in. The Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled. Coincidentally, I have several clones in the ultimate void great cosmos. In the future, when you travel through the ultimate void great cosmos, if you encounter any difficulties, you can ask them for help. Zhou 16 continued. Then, he sent the personal terminal numbers of Zhou 13 and Zhou 14 to Fei, Lord of 10,000 Evils. Thank you, big brother, Lord of 10,000 Evils said with a smile. He didn't refuse. Instead, he actively memorized Zhou 13 and Zhou 14's numbers. After all, what if he could use it one day? The ultimate void. Great Cosmos was so dangerous that he could not roam freely there, even though he was already a grade 4 supreme god. Having a few more means of self-preservation was naturally a good thing. Naturally, he would not refuse. Then, the two of them did not say anything else and immediately rushed into the battlefield, hand in hand. Big brother, how about we see who kills more enemies? I win as long as I kill 1/10 of your number, the Lord of 10,000 Evils said happily. Okay. The corners of Zhou 16's lips curled up as he agreed, the Lord of 10,000. Evil's eyes lit up. Big brother actually agreed to it, even though his big brother had the strength of a top-notch quasi-supreme willpower practitioner. He was a grade 4 supreme god after all. he also had many methods and trump cards given to him by the supreme will. No matter how he thought about it, it was impossible for him to lose such a game. Could Big Brother be giving in to me, to make me happy? Forget it. He had to win first. The Lord of 10,000 Evils only felt that victory was already in his grasp. In order not to waste time, he didn't say a word and directly rushed into the enemy's crowd to start killing wantonly. Compared to the anxious Lord of 10,000 Evils, Zhou 16, on the other hand, appeared much calmer. Ilay didn't even move. He only maintained his strength at the quasi-supreme willpower realm. Then he struck the enemy's gathering spot with his palms. A large number of enemies died with every palm strike. Among them, there was no lack of supreme gods, and even quasi-supreme willpower experts. Of course, there were also master god tiers, true god tiers, and ordinary god spirits. However, no matter how great the difference in strength between them was in front of Zhou 16's myriad method star palm, there was only one outcome: the death of all living beings. At this moment, there seemed to be no difference between a supreme god and an ordinary god spirit. The Lord of 10,000 Evils were engrossed in killing. Occasionally, he would turn around and see this scene. When he saw Zhou 16 kill the supreme gods as if they were chickens, he was dumbfounded. What's the point of competing? The corners of the Lord of 10,000 Evils' mouth twitched. An hour later, the competition between Zhou 16 and the Lord of 10,000 Evils had ended. This was because the ultimate void race had already been completely wiped out. Not a single god spirit of the ultimate void race had survived. The Supreme Will had no intention of surrendering this group of fellows who had invaded his universe and had fanatical faith in the ultimate void race. Only by eradicating all of them could they be worthy of the crimes they had committed in the supreme great cosmos for so many years. The result of the competition between the two deities was as expected. Zhou 16 won with an absolute advantage. He had killed 10 times more god spirits than Lord of 10,000 Evils. And this was under the condition that Zhou 16 hadn't used his full strength, while the Lord of 10,000 Evils had used his full strength. Otherwise, the disparity would be even greater. After the two god spirits met, the Lord of 10,000 Evils said with a bitter smile, "I won't compete with Big Brother in this kind of competition anymore." He felt that he was humiliating himself. Zhou 16 smiled and did not say a word. Even though the Lord of 10,000 Evils was a little depressed, he didn't feel conflicted. This was because he had already tacitly acknowledged that there was a huge difference in strength between him and his Big Brother. It was just that he didn't expect the difference to be so huge before the competition. He quickly forgot his depressed mood and said with a smile, "Big Brother, let's go." "The banquet is long overdue," Zhou 16 nodded. Ilay wasn't in a hurry to get the fragment of the legendary tier illusionary sage seal. Even the Supreme Will didn't discover the existence of the incomplete sage seal after all. It wouldn't be a problem for him to get it later. Hence, Zhou 16 went to attend the banquet with the Lord of 10,000 Evils. And this banquet was indeed as the Lord of 10,000 Evils had said. Not only were the various dishes high-end, but they were also very delicious. They were even quite helpful to Zhou 16's cultivation. In fact, Zhou 16 even felt that with the power he borrowed from these supreme god-level dishes, he had a feeling that his strength had temporarily increased by about 20% after a simple meal. Don't be fooled by the two levels. One had to know that he was an expert who was infinitely close to the true Supreme Will realm. Percent of his strength was enough to make dozens or even hundreds of quasi-Supreme Will realm experts look up to him. It could be seen how terrifyingly powerful these dishes were after being enhanced, as expected of an expert who became a supreme god with the path of gourmet food. The culinary skills are unquestionable. Zhou 16 was surprised. At his level, there weren't many things and life forms that could surprise him. Obviously, this supreme god invited by the Lord of 10,000 Evils was one of them. Zhou 16 looked at the delicacies on the table in front of him and could not help but have an idea. Why don't I invite this guy to be my personal royal chef? He can make any request he wants. With the current conditions of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, it was simply easy to satisfy the requirements of a supreme god. Even if he was given the opportunity to reach the supreme will realm, it was Zhou, not impossible with the top legacy in his hands. Since this supreme god chef could even increase his own strength, he must have nurtured more military chefs to increase the combat power of the soldiers under him. Whatever Zhou 16 did now, he wanted his main body's divine kingdom to be able to rise in power. Even if they hired a master chef, they were wondering if they could promote the master chef's skills to the entire army. He immediately went to Lord of 10,000 Evils to discuss this matter with him. When the Lord of 10,000 Evils heard Zhou 16's words, he immediately laughed. I knew that you wouldn't be able to resist recruiting him under your command after tasting his cooking. The Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled and said, because I had the same thought after eating his delicacies for the first time. I even sent someone to invite him, and was turned down. Zhou 16 nodded. I was rejected. The Lord of 10,000 Evils' expression was a little regretful before he smiled in relief. However, because of this matter, I accidentally became friends with him. With the help of my friends, it's not a problem for me to invite him over to make some dishes for me and my friends, such as this time. He looked a little proud. This was because it was very difficult to be like him and invite this sacred Lord of Food and Sleep to cook for him. No supreme god could do it. Even God King Heaven Punishment and Spring Autumn Dharma Lord could not do it. This was also his pride. Other than him, perhaps only someone in the Supreme Will realm could casually order Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep to cook for them. When Zhou 16 heard that, he could not help but be surprised and curious. A supreme god would actually reject the recruitment of a Supreme Lord Reserve Army. He was only willing to cook for him occasionally. What's his reason for refusing? Zhou 16 asked curiously. He said that he only likes to cook for ordinary life forms and doesn't want to be the exclusive imperial chef of a certain powerhouse. That would go against his heart. As a chef, the Lord of 10,000 Evils praised. There's a legend. Once, the Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court personally sent a Supreme Will Realm cultivator over to invite the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep to be their exclusive imperial chef. But even so, the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep rejected their invitation. The Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court did not force the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep to join them after knowing his reason for rejection, because they knew that if this really went against the original intention of the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep, even if the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep was forcefully invited to be their exclusive imperial chef, the taste Li made would probably not be as delicious as before. It would only be as ordinary dishes. The Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep's strength might decrease because of this, and might even fall to the true god-tier level since this matter is against his will. And willpower is the true source of powerhouses above Master God tier. If you go against your will, your strength will decrease at best, and your Tao heart will collapse at worst. It's not impossible for you to die. The Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled. If not for this reason, Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep, who had astonishing culinary skills, might really have been forcefully invited by those supreme willpower realm experts to be their cooking tool. Fortunately, the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep still had his freedom, and could still make delicious dishes that countless god spirits and even supreme willpower realm experts would savor because of this reason. Zhou 16 clicked his tongue in wonder. From the looks of it, this Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep was quite legendary. He had even rejected the invitation of a Supreme Will Realm expert. Furthermore, after rejecting it, not only was he safe and sound, but he had also become famous and renowned in the entire God-Spirit circle. That's true. Those Supreme Will Realm experts only wanted to cat delicacies. If the sacred lord of food and sleep failed to make delicious food because of his invitation, not only would he not be able to eat delicious food, but he would also be tainted with the bad reputation of forcibly making a supreme god Illis subordinate, causing the supreme god's Tao heart to shatter. Just the thought of it made him instinctively want to avoid it. Still, Zhou 16 still wanted to give it a try. He wanted to dispel Zhou 16's thoughts just based on the Lord of 10,000 Evil's words. Then Zhou 16 would not be Zhou Zhou's clone. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was not surprised. I'll personally invite him over. Otherwise, if an ordinary supreme god were to go over and invite him with that guy's personality, he would probably reject him directly. The Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled. Then he left directly. Zhou 6 ate while waiting. As for him, personally, inviting him, that's impossible. It would be fine if he was just a lone supreme god. He could go and do whatever he wanted. However, not only did he represent himself, he also represented the face of the blazing sun divine kingdom and even the face of the supreme will. If he humbly invited a supreme god to be hid, imperial chef, and was rejected, he would lose the face of the blazing sun divine kingdom and even the supreme will if word got out. It's not necessary to think about it. As for why the Lord of 10,000 Evils could invite him, it was because he was friends with the sacred Lord of Food and Sleep. Even if he was rejected, no one would say anything if word got out since he was invited him as a friend. At the same time, the Lord of 10,000 Evils also found the sacred Lord of Food and Sleep. At this moment, the sacred Lord of Food and Sleep was cooking a dish. When the Lord of 10,000 Evils saw this, he frowned slightly. However, after taking a deep breath, he still did not choose to disturb him. Instead, he waited quietly at the side. In a moment the smell spread after 15 minutes of cooking. The Lord of 10,000 Evils couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He secretly clicked his tongue. The sacred Lord of Food and Sleep's culinary skills had improved again. Just the smell of the delicacies was enough to make him lose control of his grade 4 supreme god body. Who would believe it? At this moment, the sacred Lord of Food and Sleep also came back to his senses and saw the Lord of 10,000 Evils who had been waiting for a long time. Something wrong? The sacred Lord of Food and Sleep asked. Zhou, I'll take you to see a friend. The Lord of 10,000 Evils said, Zhou, it was sacred Lord of Food and Sleep's real name. No. The sacred Lord of Food and Sleep rejected without thinking. Do me a favor. He is my big brother. Go and take a look for my sake. My big brother is a very nice man. The Lord of 10,000 Evils said sincerely, the sacred Lord of Food and Sleep tilted his head. When did you have a big brother? Who is it? Lord of 10,000 Evils raised his chest and said proudly, that's the 3rd Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord Common People's Regal, who recently became famous in the myriad worlds and even founded the era of the Master. Gods! The sacred Lord of Food and Sleep was surprised. Aren't you the Supreme Lord's 3rd Reserve Army? The Lord of 10,000 Evils laughed and said, Are you sure you can't do it? Today's order was lowered, and the Supreme will personally announce it. It won't be long before the myriad worlds will know. The sacred Lord of Food and Sleep looked at him in wonder. The meaning was clear. Why are you still so happy when your status has already fallen? The Lord of 10,000 Evils understood what he meant, but he didn't explain. There was no need to. One day, they would know Big Brother's ability when Big Brother becomes the 2nd Reserve Army of the Supreme Lords, or even the 1st Reserve Army of the Supreme Lords, or even a true Supreme Lord. Let's go over, since it's an invitation from the common people's regal. Right at that moment, the sacred Lord of Food and Sleep pondered for a moment before speaking. This time it was the Lord of 10,000 Evils who was stunned. He agreed so easily? He thought that he would have to spend more effort to invite him over. This fellow even dared to reject the invitation of a Supreme Will Realm expert. He was not surprised to reject the invitation of him and the common people's regal. Li has already started to play the emotional card, and you're agreeing to it directly. The Lord of 10,000 Evils had a feeling that he had prepared many methods, but none of them were useful. "Why don't you listen to me?" the Lord of 10,000 Evils said indignantly. "The sacred Lord of Food and Sleep, I've already agreed. What are you persuading me for?" The Lord of 10,000 Evils quickly brought Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep to Zhou 16. "Greetings, Your Excellency, common people's regal," the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep said respectfully. Even though he was very arrogant, it didn't mean that he was rude. On the contrary, he adhered to the rules in most situations. However, the will of his path could not allow him to become the exclusive possession of a powerhouse. "Big brother," the Lord of 10,000 Evils said happily, "he doesn't seem to dislike your summons. I didn't even try to persuade him. He took the initiative to come over." "Oh?" Zhou 16 looked at the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep in surprise and said, "This seems to be inconsistent with your legendary style of doing things, Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep. It's better to have a different attitude towards different god spirits. Some people are difficult to deal with. They have to decisively reject him, sometimes. They even have to show some ruthless methods so that they won't be pestered by that kind of god spirit. For those with a good personality, I will also kindly refuse, and they will not make things too difficult for me. As for your Majesty." The Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep looked at Zhou 16 and slowly said, "I used to cook for many living beings on the High Continent. They don't even know my identity. They only know that I'm a vagrant chef who cooks very well. I've heard a lot about you from them. You treat your subjects very well. Your Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom is a habitable place that all living beings in the myriad worlds dream of living in. Your Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom is the only dream country that can be called a land of peace with the High Continent, and even the myriad worlds in the background of an abyss of war. I had my doubts about the truth of the matter. It wasn't until I personally went to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and stayed there for a period of time that I found out. The legends I've heard about the common people's regal and the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom only showcase 1% of the beautiful life in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Your pity for ordinary life forms and the peaceful country you created makes me respect you very much." At this point, he bowed deeply. "You let me know that there's another country in this war-torn high continent that exists for peace and ordinary life forms. So when I heard that Your Excellency the Lord of 10,000 Evils asked me to meet you, I agreed without hesitation. Your Excellency Common People's Regal, thank you for your invitation." The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned. Zhou 16 blinked as well. Then he smiled. He knew that the things that his main body was doing for the benefit of the subjects were never trivial matters that no one cared about. In this world, there would always be some existences who would pay attention to the lives of ordinary life forms. "This Emperor wants to invite you over to be a chef in our Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. It's not the Emperor's imperial chef alone, but the entire subject of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom." "Will you do it?" Zhou 16 asked. "I'd be honored, the Foy," Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep said respectfully. Zhou 16 nodded with a smile. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was dumbfounded again. "Welcome to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. In the future, in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, you can take on the position of the chief chef of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. This Emperor won't ask you to cook delicacies for this Emperor or other officials alone. You can cook for whoever you want. However, this Emperor hopes that you will not be stingy with your abilities and impart them to others to nurture a professional team of chef professionals for the soldiers and citizens of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Let the soldiers and every subject enjoy such delicious and enhanced delicacies." "What do you say?" Zhou 16 asked. "I'm honored," the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep said respectfully and excitedly, to be able to meet such a monarch who knew his nomological path and respected him. He truly felt that he was blessed. No wonder every living being that joined the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom worshipped and respected the common people's regal. It would be the same even if a deity with his personality came. Then he thought for a moment and said, "If your majesty wants to eat the delicacies I make, I'm still willing to make them for you. I'll also be very honored to make your majesty think that the food I make is worthy of tasting. In addition, if there are any important banquets in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom that require some high-end delicacies as a subject of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, I am also very willing to contribute to the Divine Kingdom." Okay, Zhou 16 nodded with a smile. Then he looked at Lord of 10,000 Evils strangely. "Is that what you meant by not being easy to talk to?" He even directly rejected the request for the strength of the Supreme Will Realm. "I think he is pretty easy to talk to. I haven't even said much, but this sacred lord of food and sleep feels like he is about to offer himself up. Isn't this person quite good?" When Lord of 10,000 Evils saw Zhou 16's gaze, the entire god spirit nearly fainted. He was a little angry and incredulous. This guy wasn't like this when facing him. "You're treating me differently. I can't accept this. I was clearly the first to know you." The Lord of 10,000 Evils had a stomach full of bitterness, but he couldn't say it out loud. It turned out that this guy also had a passionate side. He just didn't want to show it to himself. "Get up." Zhou 16 didn't mind Lord of 10,000 Evils' strange reaction and spoke warmly to Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep. The Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep stood up with a smile on his face. The more Lord of 10,000 Evils looked at it, the more unbalanced he felt. He simply closed his eyes and stopped looking. Zhou 16 and Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep ignored he, as Zhou 16 said, "As the director of the Imperial Kitchen Department of our Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, your status in the entire Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom is equivalent to a second-level official. Second only to officials like this Emperor, the Prime Minister, and the Legion Commander. As for the salary, this Emperor can give you a salary comparable to a quasi-supreme willpower realm expert. Also, this is a small reward from this Emperor. This Emperor likes the delicacies you make very much. I hope to have the chance to taste your dishes more in the future." Zhou 16 smiled. "Your Majesty, you're too kind." The Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep hurriedly said, "If your Majesty wants to eat, just give the order. I guarantee that I will not have any complaints, and will immediately make it for your Majesty. His Majesty is responsible for the lives of billions of subjects. I am willing and honored to cook for your Majesty, and will never think of it as an intrusion." Zhou 16 clicked his tongue. How many times does he have to mention the word honor? "I knew this guy was easy to talk to. Okay, this is your gift. Take a look. This Emperor believes you will like it very much. Even in this Emperor's treasury, there aren't many sets of this gift." As Zhou 16 spoke, he threw a world ring to the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep. The Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep took it and carefully probed it with his willpower. Then he was stunned for a moment before he immediately became extremely shocked and ecstatic. It's, thank you, your Majesty. I will never forget this reward." The Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep was so touched that he almost lost his voice. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was also curious. What kind of reward could make a guy like the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep, who didn't change his expression easily, have such a big reaction? "It's good that you like it." This Emperor's efforts were not in vain. Zhou 16 chuckled. Then he chatted with the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep for a while longer before letting him continue cooking. Zhou 16 looked at the Sacred Lord of Food and Sleep's departing figure and felt very emotional. This guy had a simple personality and was obsessed with food. With he around, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom might be able to produce a few supreme gods of gourmet laws that would shock the myriad worlds in the future. They might even be existences at the Supreme Will Realm on the path of food. With the excellent, nurturing soil of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, it was really possible to nurture such a genius after all. "Big brother, what did you give that guy? To make him so happy?" The Lord of 10,000 Evils couldn't help but ask out of curiosity. "Nothing." Zhou 16 smiled and said, "It's just a grade 4 Supreme God cooking utensil. It's not a supreme divine artifact of the orthodox combat, but it's indeed rare. I only have about 100 sets. When the Lord of 10,000 Evils heard this, he immediately revealed a shocked expression. There were supreme god-level cooking utensils. He had lived for so many years, but he had never heard of it, let alone seen it. From ancient times, until now, there were very few Grade 4 supreme gods who walked the path of delicacies, let alone Grade 4 supreme god-level cooking tools and divine artifacts after all. It could be considered an unorthodox one. However, his big brother actually had such an extremely unorthodox divine artifact? No wonder the sacred lord of food and sleep was so excited. His cooking utensils were only those of Master God tier advance grade. He had paid a huge price to obtain that kitchenware from the supreme god of creation, one of the 4 supreme Bio gods. The sacred lord of food and sleep even regarded such a kitchenware as his most beloved treasure, not to mention the Grade 4 supreme god cooking utensils. Upon hearing the latter half of the sentence, the corners of his mouth twitched. His big brother was really acting cool all the time, even though he was really awesome. After that, Zhou 16 chatted with the Lord of 10,000 Evils for a while, and agreed that Lord of 10,000 Evils could come to Aya's place and often freeload off the sacred Lord of Food and Sleep. After that, the Lord of 10,000 Evils left, and Zhou 16 did not waste any more time. He directly used the ultimate void travel and arrived at the ultimate void battleground. At this moment, there were no more God Spirit soldiers here. Even the clone of the Supreme Will had left, leaving behind only a broken city in the sacred zone. Starting today, this ultimate void battleground is my territory, plus the high continent on the verge of total conquest. I have 2 reserve army under my command. Neither the God King Heaven Punishment nor the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord had such treatment. Zhou 16 felt a little proud of his main body. Then, he didn't think much, and immediately rushed into the sanctuary, flying according to the guidance of the illusionary legendary tier Sage Seal fragment. He felt very at ease. As expected, the Supreme Will's clone and the Supreme Army under him didn't discover the location of the other fragment. Only he, who had the other 2 fragments, could discover it. While Zhou 16 was pleasantly surprised, he was also more curious about the origin of this mysterious, legendary tier, illusionary Sage Seal. He arrived at the location of the guide. This is it? Zhou 16 looked at the tall and incomplete, dark purple throne in front of him. This dark purple throne was extremely tall. It was obvious that it was not for ordinary life forms to sit on. It should be the throne of the Void Emperor. Zhou 16 thought. He looked at the throne and could feel that there was something in the throne that seemed to be summoning him. Zhou 16 narrowed his eyes. Where is it? Zhou 16 was puzzled. Then he began to search around the throne. After searching for a long time without finding anything, Zhou 16 pondered for a moment before sitting on the throne and falling into deep thought. This is the right place. But why can't I see what's inside? At the same time, inside the throne, a ball of dark purple flame-like will was quietly hiding here. Ile looked through the throne and looked at the common people's regal sitting on his head. His dark purple eyes were like a dark purple abyss at this moment, making people fear him. Indeed, the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier Sacred Seal is indeed on him. I told you that my will had been restless, as if I had encountered a treasure that moved my will ever since common people's regal came to the ultimate void battleground. So it's because the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier Sage Seal has come to my territory. Oh, there's no supreme will behind this common people's regal. In other words, he has also hidden the existence of the fragment of the legendary tier Sacred Seal. It seems that he has also discovered that this legendary tier Sacred Seal is not simple, as expected of a creature blessed by great fortune. I only have 1 fragment. This little guy has 2 pieces on him. God help me. I accidentally obtained a fragment of the illusionary legendary tier Sage Seal even though I experienced a death tribulation. I was worth it even if I almost died. The illusionary emperor was burning with ambition, As long as he could become an eternal, immortal realm existence, he would be willing even if he had to die 10 times what more almost. Dying once. He would definitely become an eternal, immortal realm expert as long as he could survive. However, he couldn't help but feel anxious when he saw the common people's regal swaying around the throne and finally sitting on his head. The idiot? Why didn't you think that I was under the throne under his butt? I can take this. Opportunity to invade his will in one fell swoop as long as he dares to probe the power of his will and inspect the mysteries within the throne, thereby possessing him and reviving me. When the time comes, I can even make use of his identity and pretend to be the successor of the Supreme Will. After consuming all the resources of the Supreme Will, I can kill the Supreme Will in one go to avenge my death today. Damn it! Why hasn't he realized that there might be something he wants under the throne? The Void Emperor gritted his teeth. He was only one step away from success, and the other party was pulling him to the limit. It was really uncomfortable. Wait a minute. Could he had already discovered that I was inside the throne and was deliberately confusing me outside? This, in thought, suddenly appeared in the Void Emperor's mind, and he could not help but be shocked. However, he looked at the shape above his head and felt that it was unlikely. How could he sit on his head casually if the other party had really discovered him? He did not believe that a supreme god would dare to treat a strong will like him. Furthermore, his throne was made from a transcendent-level material in the ultimate void. How could a mere supreme god see through him in the throne? Let's wait. The Void Emperor had some patience again. He did not believe that a supreme god could not be interested in the inheritance of an eternal, immortal realm expert. That was an inheritance that even he was extremely tempted by. Right at that moment, Zhou 16 stood up and muttered to himself, "Never mind. It is okay if we can't find it. It is just a seal of unknown origin. There's no need to put so much effort into it. It's better to spend the time cultivating than staying here." Zhou 16 shook his head and prepared to leave. The Void Emperor, who was hiding in the throne, was dumbfounded. He suddenly realized, improblem. Was it possible that common people's regal didn't know that this illusionary legendary tier sage seal represented the inheritance of an eternal immortal realm? Therefore, he didn't care about it at all. Thinking of this, he immediately panicked. He could not let this guy leave. Once this fellow left, not only would he not be able to obtain the illusionary legendary tier sacred seal fragment from him, but more importantly, he would not be able to obtain his divine body to be reborn. Such a desolate and vast place. He might never meet other life forms in his life if he missed the common people's regal. However, he did not dare to take the initiative to capture common people's regal and possess him. This was because the Supreme Will would definitely sense the aura of his incomplete will and quickly come looking for him once he left the protection of the throne. At that time, he might really lose his life, not to mention possessing the common people's regal. The Void Emperor could not help but feel fear at the thought of the Supreme Will. This Supreme Will was indeed a top-notch expert in the ultimate void great cosmos that was on par with the Crimson Overlord. No wonder the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos had fought internally for so many years. Other Great Cosmos did not dare to take advantage of the chaos to have any ideas about them. Even though the number of experts in their multiverse was average, they, as the leader of the multiverse, was really strong. He couldn't even last an hour in front of the Supreme Will before he was taken down. This proved that there was an absolute difference in strength between him and the other party. However, I had no choice but to fight him head-on. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look resentfully at the common people's regal who was about to leave. It was all this guy's fault. It was this fellow who turned his originally good situation into this. He hesitated for a moment before taking out a piece of the seal. It was the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier sacred seal. He resisted the urge to put it back and threw the seal onto the throne. As expected, Zhou 16, who was about to leave, heard this strange sound. Then she turned around and discovered the seal. Zhou 11 raised his eyebrows. He wanted to use the power of his will to bring it to him. It didn't work out. This thing was made of a transcendent level and material. No one could hold it at a distance unless they were a strong willpower user under the ownerless state. Zhou 16 laughed when he saw this. He then shook his head, retracted his hand, and sighed. Your Excellency Void Emperor, you really put in a lot of effort to lure me over. The Void Emperor's heart sank. This fellow had actually discovered him long ago. He suddenly felt a towering anger in his heart. He thought of the scene just now. He was clearly just a grade 3 supreme god realm. Since he already knew of his existence, he actually dared to do something like sitting on his head. Didn't he know how to spell the word death? At this moment, he had an unprecedented killing intent towards the common people's regal. You're courageous, the Void Emperor said in a low voice. Anyone could hear the anger in his voice. You have to be brave. Zhou 16 shook his head and said with a sigh, An expert who can turn me into ashes in the blink of an eye is right beside me. If I didn't have the guts to act a little more pretentiously, how could I make you think that I didn't discover you, Senior? Even though it's a bit of a gamble. A faint smile appeared on Zhou 16's lips. But I think I won the bet. The Void Emperor did not speak after hearing this. However, the anger in his heart was accumulating rapidly. This guy, how dare he? Not only did he blatantly say that he was teasing him, but his tone was also showing off. Even though this was indeed worth showing off, didn't he know that the consequences of provoking the dignity of a powerhouse were very serious? At this moment, Zhou 16 seemed to know what the Void Emperor was thinking, and clicked his tongue in wonder. Let me guess. Senior, the reason why you haven't attacked me for so long must be because of some restrictions, right? You were probably in a very bad state after you were beaten into faking death by the Supreme Will, even if you didn't really die, right? This should be the main reason why the Void Emperor could tolerate me for so long, right? This broken throne should be your shelter. You're afraid to come out. It's probably because something bad happens when you come out. For example, if you can't support your injuries, this throne can stabilize your injuries. If it appears, there's a risk of your injuries worsening or even dying suddenly. Another example is that this throne has the ability to hide your own body. It's fine if you don't come out, but if you appear, you will immediately be discovered by the Supreme Will. Then there's also the risk of death. I wonder if I'm right. Zhou 16 said with a smile. The Void Emperor looked at Zhou 16 and said softly, To remain calm in the face of a great enemy. The Supreme Will has chosen a good successor. Why don't you follow me? Our ultimate void race is best at searching for ownerless treasures in the ultimate void, great cosmos. Over the years, we have accumulated countless true treasures. Among these supreme treasures, there's no lack of supreme will treasures, and even eternal immortal realm treasures. I even specially built a void treasure vault for these countless treasures. If you follow me, I can make you my successor. I can let you choose any treasure in the treasure vault. How about that? The Void Emperor asked sincerely. Your lordship's offer is very tempting. However, that's all. Forgive me if I don't agree. After all, I also have hundreds of millions of treasures. While it's not as high grade as the treasures in the Void Treasury that you mentioned, it's good enough for a junior. As for willpower treasures, or even eternal immortal realm treasures, even if it's in my hands, I'm afraid I won't be able to control it. I'm only a grade 3 supreme god realm after all, Zhou 16 said. He was telling the truth, even though Zhou 15 was using the willpower treasure of the reality cube to disguise his identity. The power of the will treasure had always been provided by the Supreme Will. Zhou 15 was only using the power of the Supreme Will. Therefore, Zhou 15 was not jealous of that treasure at all. Even if that treasure really fell into his Enzrace wouldn't be able to use it after all. He would be no different from trash. He had once been able to use the divine artifact's chaotic holy power at a higher level. After he advanced to the supreme god level, he had already reached the upper limit. He had to use the power of his willpower if he wanted to control a supreme will treasure. However, even so, he could only use it for a short period of time. If he used it for a long time, his willpower wouldn't be able to last long. If he wanted to control a supreme will treasure, he had to use the power of his willpower. But even so, he could only use it for a short period of time. If he used it for a long time, his willpower wouldn't be able to last long. He couldn't use it. He really couldn't use it. "Oh," the Void Emperor said in a low voice, "then aren't you interested in the illusionary legendary tier sacred seal fragment in your hand? Do you want to know its secret? As long as you're willing. To join me and find me a body to possess, I can share this secret with you. I can tell you first. This secret concerns the top expert of the ultimate void great cosmos, the secret of an eternal realm expert." The Void Emperor's tone was very sincere. Zhou 16 thought seriously for a moment before saying, "Then you have to tell me the general contents of this secret first. Otherwise, how do I know if I should believe you?" The Void Emperor fell silent. He said after a long while, "Okay, I can tell you. However, when you find out the secret, you're going to find me a body to possess. If you're willing to give me the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier voice in your hand, I can share the details of this secret with you and let you witness the scenery on the peak with me." "How'd it go?" "Don't think of running away when you know the secret and trying to keep it to yourself. First of all, one of the illusionary legendary tier sage seals is in my hands. You can't open that secret with just your own fragment of the illusionary legendary tier sage seal. Secondly, even if you can gather all the fragments of the illusionary legendary tier sage seal, you alone, a grade 3 supreme god realm, can't open this secret. You need a willpower expert like me to open this secret and let us share it. You need me," the Void Emperor said. "I see. This illusionary legendary tier sage seal is indeed related to an eternal immortal realm expert to make you beg me so humbly." Zhou 16 flipped his right hand and saw his illusionary legendary tier sacred seal fragment appear in his hand. I knew it was something special, just as I expected. Zhou 16 muttered to himself. However, he wasn't too excited. The eternal immortal realm inheritance? The supreme sacred body that he was currently cultivating was a part of the eternal immortal realm inheritance. If he could become the only supreme lord in the future, he would steadily obtain the eternal immortal realm inheritance from the supreme will. Therefore, in the eyes of Zhou 16, the illusionary legendary tier sacred seal fragment that the Void Emperor regarded as the highest secret was only so-so. Who doesn't? The Void Emperor also noticed Zhou 16's expression. It was not the expression he had imagined. His heart sank as he had a bad premonition. If it comes down to it, I'll just have to take the risk. Even though I'll be discovered by the Supreme Will, as long as I can snatch the fragment of the legendary tier sacred seal from the common people's regal before the Supreme Will descends on me, I'll escape immediately. I have a chance of surviving and getting what I want. As long as I escape the range of the Supreme Great Cosmos, no one can capture me in the ultimate void other than eternal realm experts. A ruthless look appeared in the Void Emperor's eyes, for the sake of the eternal immortal realm inheritance. He would risk it all. He quietly activated the power of his will and set up a will domain around Zhou 16. A cold smile appeared on the Void Emperor's face after setting up this will domain. With this will domain, let alone others, a mere common people's regal would definitely not be able to escape from his palm. Not to mention the common people's regal. Even if a supreme will realm expert was here, it was impossible for them to escape. At the same time, when he attacked the common people's regal, this will domain could also try its best to hide the movements of its attack and delay the time when the Supreme Will discovered this place and rushed over. Common people's regal. I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to cooperate with me? Share the secrets of the illusionary legendary tier sacred seal fragment? Let me remind you one last time. This secret concerns the eternal immortal realm. If you miss this opportunity, when you become a supreme will realm expert in the future and discover the true preciousness of the eternal immortal realm's secret, you will definitely regret it. The Void Emperor said in a low voice, "Of course I understand, but—" Zhou 16 smiled. "I really don't trust you." Boom! A terrifying willpower suddenly erupted, stirring up a willpower gale that blew up Zhou 16's hair. However, not only did this not make Zhou 16 look messy, he instead revealed a wild and dangerous beauty. His eyes were bright. He was completely unafraid of everything in front of him. Ile was like a young hero who had seen a terrifying dragon for the first time. His eyes were filled with smiles, and there was no fear at all. "Your Excellency, Void Emperor." You finally couldn't take it anymore. "I wondered how long you'd have to put up with a junior like me. In fact, I'm already beginning to be surprised at your patience," Zhou 16 said with a smile. "In fact, I'm already beginning to be surprised at your patience." This expression and posture was not something that could be faked. He seemed to really have the confidence to face all his methods. It was just a grade 3 supreme god realm. Where did he get so much confidence? He did not hide his doubts and directly asked. Zhou 16 did not say a word. And behind him came a terrifying voice that made the Void Emperor's hair stand on end. It was even unforgettable in his dreams. The confidence of his naturally came from me, of course. A gentle, yet majestic figure appeared behind Zhou 16. It was the Supreme Will. "Greetings, Lord Supreme Will," Zhou 16 smiled and said respectfully. The Supreme Will nodded slightly and smiled. "Well done. This guy's ultimate void escape is one of the top 3 escape techniques in the ultimate void cosmos. Even I would find it difficult to find him if he used this escape technique to escape. Fortunately, you lured him out. Otherwise, we might really let him escape. It's my duty, and it's not my style to let the enemy escape." Zhou 16 smiled. He had already informed the Supreme Will the moment he realized that something was amiss. As for the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier sacred seal, how could it be more important than his own life? The Supreme Will nodded in satisfaction. He was getting more and more satisfied with this little guy. The Void Emperor, who had been left aside, felt his entire body turn cold. He now understood everything. It turned out that everything this kid did before was just to stall for time until the Supreme Will arrived. No wonder this kid had been spouting nonsense for so long. The Void Emperor, who had figured everything out, gritted his teeth. However, when he saw the figure of the Supreme Will, he couldn't help but feel fear. "Escape! I have to escape! We can't just sit back and do nothing! The ultimate void escape!" The Void Emperor burned 99% of his willpower again and activated the ultimate void escape to escape. Ilis' heart was bleeding. The ultimate void escape was very harmful to him. He had already used it once before, and that time made his already serious injuries worse. Now that he had used it again in order to escape, he wasn't even sure if he would still be alive after his ultimate void escape ended. However, he had no choice but to use it. Otherwise, he would die immediately. It's better to die by my own hands than by the hands of the Supreme Will. The Void Emperor gritted his teeth and was about to escape. At that moment, the Supreme Will suddenly looked at him coldly. "The same trick won't let you escape a second time," the Supreme Will said coldly. He waved his right hand and saw the ultimate void in front of him, crack layer by layer, revealing the Void Emperor who was escaping through the ultimate void escape. The Dumaim Baidam Void Emperor originally thought that he could escape, but he did not expect to see this scene when he turned around. He was extremely shocked as he shrieked, "You can actually break through the ultimate void? You can actually break through the ultimate void?" He had a look of complete despair. How dare I provoke such an existence and survive? To this day. Oh, he was crushed to death by the power of the Supreme Will. Zhou 16 clicked his tongue. Il finally understood why the Void Emperor had lost so quickly. The two of them were on completely different levels. He stole a glance at the Supreme Will. The Supreme Will, who had just finished doing all this, had an indifferent expression. He was completely different from a powerhouse who had just killed a willpower. It was as if he had just crushed and eased a Nora and, "Oh, Lord Supreme Will," Zhou 16 could not help but ask, "Have you really touched that realm?" The Supreme Will nodded slightly, then shook his head slightly. "I was lucky enough to catch a glimpse, but not to the extent of getting it. The illusionist clan would never invade my supreme great cosmos if I really touched that realm," he said lightly. Zhou 16 nodded and clicked his tongue again. He had only taken a peek at the power of the eternal immortal realm, but he was already able to crush a willpower expert. How strong would a true eternal realm expert be? Zhou 16 could not help but yearn for it. The Supreme Will waved his right hand, and a holy white dot of light flew out from the damaged purple throne and landed in the Supreme Will's hand. Zhou 16's heart skipped a beat when he saw this dot of light. Through the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier sacred seal in the #1 treasure vault, he sensed that the thing inside the light spot was another fragment of the legendary tier sacred seal. The Supreme Will should be able to recognize him easily, right? If only I could have it. Zhou 16 thought to himself, unexpectedly, just as he had this thought. He saw the Supreme Will throw the fragment of the legendary tier sacred seal in his hand to him. Zhou 16 subconsciously caught it and was at a loss. Given to him so easily. This was a treasure that concerned an eternal realm expert. Even someone as powerful as the Supreme Will should be very concerned, right? At this moment, the voice of the Supreme Will rang out. "Consider this your reward. You can't go back empty-handed, since that's why you're here." And Zhou 16 hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you know what this thing is, Supreme Will?" He still did not know what this so-called illusionary legendary tier sage seal was. He only knew that it was related to an eternal realm expert. However, he was still very puzzled as to what it was. He had no idea how to use it. Judging from its aura and name, it most likely belongs to the illusionist clan. It should be the inheritance of an eternal realm expert of the illusionary clan. However, only by gathering all the pieces can you get the legacy. Difficult. Too difficult. The Supreme Will shook his head. Is it difficult? Zhou 16 looked at the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier sage seal in his hand and scratched his head. Why did Isle find it so easy? He hadn't even searched much, but he had already gathered 3 of these so-called fragments. There are only 5 pieces of this thing, and I already have more than half of it. Don't compare yourself to other creatures. One look at Zhou 16's expression, and the Supreme Will knew what he was thinking. He said speechlessly, "The first reason you can get it is because you have great luck. Everything good and good will come to you, including this fragment of the illusionary legendary tier sage seal. Secondly, you might have some affinity with this thing. Otherwise, in terms of luck, I'm much luckier than you, but why did it find you and not me? There's a high probability that your luck suits its taste. Life forms seek treasures, and treasures seek their owners. You must be the one once." Zhou 16 nodded. There's nothing wrong with that. Luck could allow good things to constantly gather on those with rich luck. However, who would the treasure be looking for when 2 people with the same luck encountered the same treasure at key? That moment, it would depend on the compatibility between the person with great luck and the treasure. That's what they call affinity. It's good to see you again. Those with great luck and treasures would naturally come together. Those with great luck might obtain other treasures of the same level as this treasure, but the original treasure would not look for you. Instead, it would look for the master it liked more. Zhou 16 looked at the fragment of the illusionary legendary tier sage seal in his hand. Could I really have a good compatibility with it? It seemed to be the case, recalling the experiences he had along the way. He didn't even have to exert much effort before this thing came up to him. Zhou 16 could not help but laugh. Seeing this, the Supreme Will could not help but shake his head with a smile. Common People's Regal was indeed the one with the most outstanding luck among eyeless peers among Elis' four successors. Lord Supreme Will, don't you need this? Zhou 16 pointed at the illusionary legendary tier sacred seal fragment in his hand and asked curiously, I have it. Moreover, at my level, I already have my own path. The inheritance of a few more Eternal Realm experts is just a reference for me. A few more won't make much sense. It's the same for you. Don't take this thing too seriously. The Supreme Will warned solemnly. In the future, you can imitate how they broke through when you want to break through to the realm of supreme willpower or even the realm of willpower. However, this thing can only be used as a reference when you're about to break through to the eternal immortal realm in the future. It may lead you astray if you value it too much. Understood, Zhou 16 nodded thoughtfully. Then, he stopped thinking about it. The eternal immortal realm was too far away from him. It was enough for him to know how to break through to the unparalleled willpower realm, or even the willpower realm. At this moment, the Supreme Will asked again, this is one of the pieces. How many more pieces do you have on your side? 2, Zhou 16 replied honestly. In other words, you need 2 more fragments to gather the complete illusionary legendary tier sage seal. It's a little difficult, I can tell you first. I just searched through the entire Supreme Great Cosmos and didn't find any traces of the other 2 illusionary legendary tier sage seal fragments. In other words, the remaining 2 fragments are not in the Supreme Great Cosmos. They are most likely in other places in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, or even in the world of the illusionist. Iklan, even though you have great luck to protect you, and this inheritance seems to be very favorable to you, you have to be prepared not to obtain these 2 fragments in a short period of time. Rest assured, Supreme Will. Zhou 16 grinned. I'm only a grade 3 Supreme God realm. I'm not in a hurry to inherit the eternal immortal realm. I understand that the most important thing now is to continue to improve my cultivation and strive to break through to the Supreme Will realm as soon as possible. We'll talk about it later. I don't think so far ahead. You have a good attitude. The Supreme Will praised. Then, he looked at the battlefield and smiled. This ultimate void battleground is completely safe from now on. Take care of this place from now on. Don't underestimate this place. I spent a lot of effort to build this ultimate void battlefield back then. Due to some coincidences, its potential is not inferior to the High Continent, the River of Time, and the Twilight battlefield. Run this place well. It won't let you down. This place is no weaker than the High Continent, the River of Time, and the Twilight battlefield. Zhou 16 was shocked when he heard that. That's right. As for why, the Supreme Will smiled. You'll understand when you start running this place in the future. The Supreme Will vanished from his original spot after saying that, leaving Zhou 16 standing there in deep thought without another word. Not inferior to the High Continent, the River of Time, and the Twilight battlefield. Is the ultimate void battleground that strong? Other than the abundance of promotion energy in the void mystic realm and the fact that the ultimate void battlefield can capture ownerless treasures in the ultimate void great cosmos, why don't I know what other benefits this ultimate void battlefield has? Zhou 16 was suspicious. He thought for a moment and felt that he had to ask the Lord of 10,000 Evils. The Lord of 10,000 Evils had been operating the ultimate void battlefield before he came. If there were any secrets to this ultimate void battlefield, the Lord of 10,000 Evils would most likely know. However, he didn't go immediately. Instead, he took out the other 2 fragments of his illusionary legendary tier sacred seal and fused them with the new one. The 3 fragments completely fused together in no time. A text notification appeared. Treasure name, illusionary legendary tier. Sacred seal, 2-5, treasure grade, unknown. Treasure effect 1, in the process of awakening. Treasure description, unknown. Zhou 16 originally thought that there wouldn't be any changes in this fusion. This thing was still incomplete, after all. Furthermore, There hadn't been any changes during the previous fusion. However, he never expected that the effects of the treasures would actually have the words "in the process of awakening" after the fusion. In the process of awakening? It's not complete yet. It's just 3 fragments, yet it can already display its effects. Zhou 16's eyes lit up. It is a good thing. I wonder how long we'll have to wait, Zhou 16 thought. However, he wasn't in a hurry. He then put the illusionary legendary tier Sage seal back into the #1 treasure vault, and then directly used the ultimate void travel to leave this place and return to the Lord of 10,000 Evils. As for the sacred zone, he had already obtained the Chaos Divine Treasure, the ultimate void crystal, and the illusionary legendary tier Sage seal. There was nothing left for him here. He came to the Lord of 10,000 Evils in no time. At this moment, the Lord of 10,000 Evils was walking alone on the ultimate void battlefield. When Zhou 16 appeared in front of him, he revealed a stunned expression. "Big brother, you're done so quickly?" At this moment, Lord of 10,000 Evils was walking alone on the ultimate void battlefield. When Zhou 16 appeared in front of him, he revealed a stunned expression. "Big brother, you're done so quickly?" Zhou 16 asked. "What are you doing here?" "I'm about to take my men out of here, and I'd like to see this place again before I leave." The Lord of 10,000 Evils smiled. "If you can't bear to leave, why don't you run this place with me from now on?" the Zhou 16 invited sincerely. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was immediately shocked when he heard this. He, hurriedly, said, Forget it. It wasn't easy for me to leave this place and live my carefree life. I've even found a place to go on vacation. How can I come back here?" Zhou 16 was speechless. This guy had just left the ultimate void battleground, yet he had already thought of a vacation location. How much did he want to leave this place? Zhou 16 shook his head and did not think too much about it. He directly asked, "Demon Lord, do you know what's so special about the ultimate void battleground?" Special? The Lord of 10,000 Evils was stunned. Then he probed, "Is this the only ultimate void battlefield in the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos? Special?" "That's not what I meant." Zhou 16 was speechless. Then he told Lord of 10,000 Evils the content that the Supreme Will had told him. Zhou 16 was speechless. Then he told Lord of 10,000 Evils the content that the Supreme Will had told him. "The ultimate void battlefield is not inferior to the High Continent. The River of Time and the Twilight battlefield? Are you kidding me? How come I didn't know?" Zhou 16. Good God, what a good fellow. If even Lord of 10,000 Evils didn't know what was so special about the ultimate void battleground, how would he know? Had the Supreme Will hidden the benefits of the ultimate void battleground so deeply, at the sea? Same time, the Lord of 10,000 Evils felt as if he had been struck by lightning. The ultimate void battleground actually had a secret that he did not know. Moreover, this secret made it comparable to the High Continent, the River of Time, and the Twilight battlefield. Is Big Brother joking? If it wasn't a joke and was real, then what had he been doing in the ultimate void battleground for so many years? That was tens of thousands of years. I really didn't get anything out of it except suffering, thinking of this. The Lord of 10,000 Evils felt that his Tao heart was about to collapse. Now, he felt like a person from an ordinary family who suddenly knew that he had missed out on $1 billion. Who would be able to accept this? Just as Zhou 16 was feeling depressed, he also noticed Lord of 10,000 Evils' devastated expression. The moment he thought about it, he knew what Lord of 10,000 Evils was going through. He couldn't help but laugh. The Lord of 10,000 Evils was truly miserable compared to him. Good brother, Zhou 16 patted the Lord of 10,000 Evils on the shoulder. It's fine if you didn't know in the past, but now that you know, you should come back and help me. I guarantee that you will have a share of the benefits of the ultimate void battleground. Zhou 16's words were sincere, just like how he treated his subjects. As long as they treated him well, he could repay them tenfold, or even 100-fold. The Lord of 10,000 Evils looked very conflicted when he heard this, but in the end, he still exhaled and decisively said, "A good man never goes back on his words. Since I didn't discover the benefits of obscure here when it was here, it means that this thing is destined not to belong to me." A relieved smile appeared on the Lord of 10,000 Evils' face. "I still prefer the life I yearn for." Zhou 16 patted Lord of 10,000 Evils on the shoulder. "No matter what, Big Brother welcomes you back." "Thank you, Big Brother." A smile appeared on the Lord of 10,000 Evils' face. Then Zhou 16 and the Lord of 10,000 Evils chatted for a while before the Lord of 10,000 Evils bade farewell and left. Zhou 16 watched as Lord of 10,000 Evils led the Biwa army under him away from the ultimate void battleground before turning around to look at the battlefield. What are the real benefits of the ultimate void battlefield? After thinking for a long time, Zhou 16 decided not to guess. He was going to cheat. He flipped his right hand, and the Bodhi Supreme appeared in his hand. "I know what you're going to ask." Bodhi Supreme smiled and said, "As for this question, I'll give you a discount. A chance to answer ordinary questions will do." Okay. Zhou 16 still agreed, even though he was somewhat curious as to why the answer was so cheap. The answer to that question is simple. When you send troops to occupy all the cities in the ultimate void battleground, you will see the benefits of the ultimate void battleground. The Bodhi Supreme said. Zhou 16 nodded. Bodhi Supreme nodded. "That's it?" Zhou 16 was taken aback. "That's it," the Bodhi Supreme said truthfully. "That's the answer." The Zhou 16 was shocked. "Why do you think it's so cheap?" the Bodhi Supreme asked. Zhou 16 was momentarily at a loss for words when he heard that.